President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of the Congress the Medal of Honor to Specialist 5 Clarence E. Sasser, United States Army.
I'm actually not sure that I would call it a play.
Bastards! 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 Bastards!
It's definitely theater.
Our first 4 months in combat, nothing but night patrol, reconnaissance.
Mind you, they say blacks couldn't fight at night.
Just don't never run behind my ass, and don't you never holler medic and call him out in the open, or I'll shoot you myself.
They're chucking grenades the whole time. You know what I did?
I just start whacking them away like I am DiMaggio or something.
They started chopping us up immediately. Guys are dropping like flies, hollering, medic, medic! Blah, 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 boom.
I got no hatred. War. Never personal. With me, it was absolutely a game.
It's not very glamorous. It is not a good story, but then I guess it's consistent with war. Above and beyond the call of duty. That's what it says.
Your lips look sore. That's how you're making your cash out there?
What do you say you and I move away from Mom together? It's a promise.
You're leaving?
Yeah, as soon as I have the money.
When are you coming back?
Never.
Yo, I got our ticket out of here. Rumor is this guy is sitting on at least $300K. Boom!
That's our guy.
Wait, is he blind?
We messed up to rob a blind guy, isn't it?
Just because he's blind don't mean he's insane, bro.
Guys, money's probably in there.
Who's there?
Stay right there.
How many of you are there?
It's just me, man, all right? Just let me go, please. Okay, I swear to God.
Now you're gonna see what I see.
Well, that's nice.
Very kind of you. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Congratulations on the film adaptation of a project that you've been working on for quite some time, right?
Indeed, yeah. Did you dig the trailer? That's the first time it's been shown.
And I think from what we see from the trailer, this isn't your sort of classic or what you would expect from an adaptation of a stage play, right? It's much different. It's much more dynamic.
Well, as a rule, I'm not a great fan of theater put on film. It needs to be transformed, and particularly a solo show, because things could get pretty static. But as I've worked on this show, I started this show in 2003, and I've taken it to some of the really crazy places in the world. I mean, I've played it everywhere from Broadway in New York, my hometown, to forward bases in Afghanistan, to aircraft carriers cruising the Persian Gulf, and a lot of points to Guantanamo Bay, to the DMZ in Korea. And I had so many adventures doing the show that at some point we began to film it. And then about 2 years ago, we decided to turn it into a film, and some really wonderful, creative talents came aboard, including Jim Cameron and John Landau, to executive produce. And so we created kind of a hybrid film. It's filmed theater, but it's done in venues all over the world, and it's done with a lot of cinematic finesse. So I hope it works.
Are you doing it, so it's the text itself is a series of performances by you. You're playing different characters, winners of the medal. Is the film itself, are you cutting from these different places for each of the monologues, or is each one, can we see it in, are we going to see you doing this performance or one single monologue in several different locations?
Yeah, you'll see it cuts back and forth from within monologues, and then there's a certain amount of annotation that happens, so you get some context. But essentially what it is, I try to embody 8 Medal of Honor recipients from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, different services, different wars, different ethnicities. And the show has had a lot of success. It's a huge challenge for me as an actor. It's 80 minutes uninterrupted of just transformation. And so I've done the play somewhere around 500 times, and so now that I've done the film, maybe I can stop.
Let's go back to the beginning. What gravitated you towards this? Was it the challenge of the 80 minutes of creating a piece where you would be transforming so much over the course of one piece, or was it the patriotism aspect of it? And I use patriotism I think it gets a negative connotation a lot of times, but I think this is true patriotism, is something like this.
Well, I feel like if this is patriotic, it's deeply patriotic, which is to say it's dealing with some of the fundamental concepts that bind us together, not only as Americans but as human beings. Things like fortitude and true courage and honor and looking out for the guy next to you, which is really what these guys did. I was looking for something to throw myself into, and I wanted to do something that I didn't know that I wasn't sure I could do. I really just wanted to be challenged by it. And I suppose it could have been something else, but this is what came my way on a May afternoon in 2003. This book, which was in an uncorrected proof because it wasn't published yet, and I read it, and it just floored me. And I began channeling these guys, these recipients of the Medal of Honor, and Beyond Glory emerged from it, and it's had a major impact on my life. I mean, it's the most personal work that I've ever done. But to be very honest, I don't know if I've mentioned this ever before, but Beyond Glory is specifically responsible for me being an avatar. And so, as much as
And for which you're going to be in, I think, 3 or 4 more of them as well.
And I'll be in 4 more of them. So the truth of the matter is, I owe this show so much. You know, it's and it just started out as a little solo show that I was doing at a theater down. It's called the Theater at the Women in Military Service Memorial, which is at the gates of Arlington National Cemetery. And there were many nights when I first began previewing it in March of 2004, when there would be 2 people in the audience or 3 people in the audience. And it was one of the great, and that was tough, but it was also one of the great exercises in humility I've ever had. And then word spread about the show, and you know, ultimately it led me here to
Led you here now with us. What would you say, how did you feel when James Cameron brought you Avatar after having seen, because I would imagine it's because he saw some of this?
No,
Is that why?
what happened was I was about to open it in New York in 2007. So that was, for me to be opening at the Roundabout Theater on 46th Street, for me to be opening Beyond Glory there in 2007 after having taken it through various incarnations over 4 years was extraordinary. And of course, the Roundabout was advertising it in the New York Times. And the advert was me in a Dago tee, a wife beater, whatever you call it, sleeveless T-shirt, looking real strack and military. And Jim Cameron saw the ad, and he went, "Lang, oh yeah." I'd read for him for Aliens years before, and I'd given a really good reading. Apparently not quite good enough, but good. And that just got him thinking, and that's why I was sent the script. And so I have always regarded it as the longest callback in the history of film.
Now, how did you feel going from playing the soldiers that you play in Beyond Glory, which is in many ways an homage to those soldiers and to the stories that those soldiers tell, to a soldier in Avatar who is essentially, unfortunately for the sake of the plot, a bad guy?
He is?
Well, that's what I mean. I've read that you didn't sort of want to play.
Well, you can't play a bad guy, really. I mean, I guess there are bad guys who conceive of themselves as bad guys, and that's something. But yeah, I think one of the reasons that Quaritch in Avatar is a popular character, and I think, quite frankly, the reason that he's back is because he is. It's not as simple as being. He's not a simple bad guy, because so many of the qualities that Quaritch exhibits are the qualities we look for in a leader. I mean, and understand his job, his mission is security in a fundamentally very, very insecure environment. So he's kind of doomed to failure on a daily basis, which is bad for your digestion and bad for your outlook as well. But also we postulated that Quaritch, back in when he was a Marine, because now he's, it's a private military paraforce. Back in the days when he was a Marine, the rules of engagement at that point had changed so badly that whatever reasons you go in, be all that you can be, that's just out the window. You're fighting against children. You're fighting against, enemies that you can't see. And he's long been anesthetized or cauterized by his experience. So there's part of his soul is missing, for sure. And that's I think what makes him kind of interesting.
You use the word simplicity. I'm curious if one of your interests in doing Beyond Glory in 2003 was because of the times that we were living in regards to the military, in regards to specifically the situation in Iraq, which was that it was a with us or against us time. You either had the bumper sticker to support the troops, and if you didn't have the bumper sticker, you didn't support them because you didn't support the war. It was a very simplistic black or white time that we were living in then.
Interestingly enough, I understand what you're saying, and I don't completely agree with it, because back in the day, when I was growing up in the 60s, things were pretty black, and the schism in this country was very clear. It had to do with Vietnam, and it had to do with civil rights, I think. But back in 2003, and today, the cracks in the fabric of our, national consciousness are there's so many, and they run in so many different directions. They're economic, they're racial, they're religious, they're political, they're sociological. You can be one thing, for one thing and against another. And I wanted to get at something that we could, not in a namby-pamby way, but I wanted to get to something that we could all share together. It didn't matter whether you were a red stater or a blue stater, don't matter what side of the aisle you sit on, that this is something that means something to you, kind of a reminder of what's important,
Absolutely. No, I think that's what I mean. The
Yeah.
2003 schism of red state and blue state was so prevalent in that moment that it seems that you created something that could kind of bring everybody together in a.
But it's important that there's no flag waving in this show. There's nothing jingoistic about it at all, because I don't go for that much at all. But I hope it's very American, you know.
Absolutely. Was that something that was not difficult for you, but when it came for some viewers, difficult to not have a jingoistic element to it? Because so often the military is unfortunately thrown into a kind of jingoistic language.
I don't think so. I really don't. I was surprised and delighted that that Beyond Glory, the play, plays as well for civilian audiences as it does for military, and in many respects it plays better because their theater audiences come to this and they kind of dig it. They understand that they're seeing what's intended to be a tour de force piece of theater.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, it's a tour de force piece of theater. It's you doing 80 minutes and totally energetic.
And the military, they appreciate the effort. They're just glad I showed up, you know. Yeah.
Have you ever gotten just sort of extremely exhausted from this show? Like, at this point, do you feel like you can't go on doing it anymore? Or you?
Well, I say that all the time. Every night I finish the show, I say, I ain't going to do that no more, and then I do it. But the most tiring was I did it one time. I did 3 performances in a day on the USS Carl Vinson, which is a nuclear carrier, and did 2 of them in the hangar deck where it was about 110 degrees. And I lost 11 pounds that day. And then that night I did a performance for the chief petty officers, who are really the old salts in the Navy, in one of their wardrooms. And at one point I leap up on a trunk, and I forgot that the ceilings on ships are low, so I smashed myself, knocked myself on my ass there. And so it was the end of a really long day.
Okay, that's the question. How did the navalman sort of respond to that moment?
Am I knocking myself?
Just when the actor jumped up and didn't realize and hit his head, I imagine a bunch of gruff navalmen being kind of like, "Oh." It
was all the old guys, you know. They were like, "Oh," but they kind of helped me up and slapped me a few times. And said, "Get back up there. Finish. It's good. I like it." You know. And so I did. You know, they weren't all that sympathetic.
So in the other trailer that we saw, you play a veteran as well, right? Another veteran. Can you talk about this character? The movie looks crazy.
That's well, the movie is it's Don't Breathe, and I play the blind man. He's got a name, but I can't. You know, it's none of your business, really.
And it's directed by Fede Alvarez, who made the Evil Dead remake, which I absolutely loved. He went places with that the originals didn't even dare to go in terms of gore, at the very least.
Right.
Intention was high, too.
Well, he goes down another road in this, because this is not a gory film, but it is. One of the reasons that I'm out talking about it is because I think so highly of this movie. When it was sent to me, I thought, whoa, this script, because it surprised me a number of times, and I was very impressed. And then talking to Fed on the phone, I immediately got the sense that this was a guy to be reckoned with. This was a real fine director. And of course, the Evil Dead remake was excellent. So, you know, my first response to the character was I was afraid of him, you know, afraid to go there. And that, I've learned over the years, that's a very, very healthy response, and it's a really good reason to do something when you are scared of it. So
I would also imagine playing a blind man is something that leads to a completely different set of fears than a lot of other characters that you play, because if you overdo it, then you look like you're doing a caricature of some kind. But if you underdo it, you don't sell it well enough. There's a sort of weird happy medium place that you have to find when you're portraying something that's so physically prevalent for the character and for the audience to have to read.
That's very true. And so much of the time when you make a film, there's so many, I've worked with so many directors over the years, and you want to kind of understand who a director is and how they can help you best. And Fed was such a magnificent director because he wrote it, co-wrote it, and he's extreme, so he knows story. He knows the story, but he was also very open, very improvisational. But then he also thinks through the lens. So we were really able to be very meticulous in terms of selling the blindness, which is what you're talking about, you know. And he could really shape it and say, you know, it would be tilt. Can you tilt just 2 degrees down? You know, so it was because that's going to make you blind.
You just said you've worked with some great directors. 2 of them are 2 of possibly the greatest directors we've ever had, Michael Mann and James Cameron, 2 of which are also known for being slightly intense on set. I'm wondering who's called you a worse name while you're trying to give a performance.
Well, they both called me some really horrible names that I...
But we should all say both of
but
which you've worked with numerous times. It's just the way that they work.
Oh, it is. Well, they're gifted, they're focused, they're intense, and they're a lot of fun. You know, I like working for them because I would say we approach work the same way. But when you've got guys, when you work for any director who brings it every day in the way that both Jim and Michael do, then I think you have no choice but to bring it yourself. You know, don't show up unless you're ready to work. So I like working with them, and they're both, you know, profane, and they kicked Michael, he kicked my ass big time all the time, you know.
Really?
He'd do like, we did a stunt in Public Enemies where I was rolling down a hill and shooting and stuff, and we did it 18 times, and he got it on the first one. He just wanted to, you know, kind of break my chops for a while.
Let you know who's in charge.
Well, also the setup took 4 hours, so you know you can't just do it twice. You got to. But they were both of them, and many others as well. Yeah. Fine directors.
I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions. Does anyone have any questions out there?
Hey, I wanted to see what advice you'd give to someone who's new at performing monologues.
At performing monologues, well, I think that ultimately you want to get to a point of, first of all, understand who you're talking to, right? Be very specific about that. If it's a soliloquy, that's different. That can be different than a monologue. You know, are you addressing a large crowd, or are you talking to your deaf grandmother? I mean, so be very specific about who you are speaking to. And then I would think as you work on it, be as baroque as possible with it, go down as many wrong alleys as you can, make as many outrageous choices as you can, because it's through the winnowing away of all of that that you will arrive at a point of simplicity and kind of direct address, I think. Does that make sense to you? It does?
Next question.
Hello, Mr. Lang. For Beyond Glory, how as an actor do you prepare yourself to play 8 different characters, especially with all the military background needed for each character?
Well, I was pretty schooled in who these individuals are, but I got to tell you that what I'm doing, even though these eight of these individuals are living men, or were at the time when I wrote it, only one is left as we speak. Beyond Glory is an exercise in, it's more a painting than it is a photograph. It's impressionistic just by definition, because I'm not black, right? I'm not Nisei. But my job is to make a contract with the audience that you will accept me as such, and if I commit deeply enough to do that. Now, in terms of the military preparation, that's a question of, you know, research, observation, and imagination, it seems to me. And so that's what I've tried to do. I've been either, I guess, fortunate or whatever, that I've played a lot of military roles over the years, which I attribute to the fact that I have fairly good posture and good diction, you know, and I at least know how to salute, you know.
Next question.
Hi, I really enjoyed you in Fox's Terranova, but I have a question about a movie that I really want to see you in. Any update on playing Cable in Deadpool 2?
Well, I don't have an update on it. I mean, I think I said something, here's the extent of what I did was, because for years, ever since Avatar, people have said I should play Cable. And so finally, and after Deadpool came out, there was a lot of that. And so finally, I did a tweet where basically I said, yeah, I should play Cable, right? So, and so all of a sudden that became, he's campaigning for the role. Cool, whatever. So now what I do is, that sounds like Madeline Kahn, right? That's a Madeline Kahn. What is it that you do? When someone tweets like a good piece of fan art, where they kind of superimpose my face on this big body, I'll retweet it. That's my campaign, for it. And I have no updates on it at all. I think in the end, I hope I'm not dutching myself to say this, I think it's unlikely because, number one, it's the same studio as Avatar, and I am committed to a bunch of Avatar films, but that's okay. I don't think they should be good. We'll fit it in. And the other thing is, even though I know Cable is kind of an old dude like me, I just think they'll probably get somebody younger. But they're making a terrible mistake if they do that.
You are committed to a bunch of Avatar films. Are there any updates on those? I would imagine not, because Jim Cameron has a sniper rifle trained to your back right now.
I can tell you the entire saga right now, but all I can really tell you is that it's really just stunning writing. The story that's unfolding that we're making it's a beautiful, vast scoped story, but one of the things that I think is so extraordinary about it is it's very, very intimate. It's very emotional as well. So you're going to see, remember when on Pandora, you really only saw one aspect of that planet. You saw the kind of bioluminescent part of it, and there's an awful lot of environments and an awful lot of creatures and inhabitants on Pandora. So you're really going to get a great tour of the planet over the next 4 films.
I think we have time for one more question right here.
Yes. So in Don't Breathe, you played a blind person, and Into the Badlands, you played someone who's in a wheelchair. So I was wondering how your approach was for that, to play a character in a wheelchair, if it was different from anything else you've done.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, basically, I sat down and I immobilized my legs. I tried to just do without them because I had basically postulated that he'd been kind of hobbled, where he, it was an injury that it was put on him, where he was sort of snipped, and he couldn't use them, but he's still pretty good with his upper torso. And I did, and I worked out in the chair, I did workouts in the chair, and I also got, so I'm pretty mobile, pretty good with the chair. And so that's how I did it, and it was successful enough because I'm going to come back to be, I'm going to Ireland to do 7 more episodes. They like Waldo. I took the role because I really like the name. I'm really shallow, Waldo. I've never played anyone named Waldo. I'll take it. But anyway, I thought we were going to another place philosophically about, disabled actors. No, and that's completely legitimate. We don't have to do that if we don't want to. But philosophically, I kind of feel that any actor should be able to play any role. I also recognize the realities of opportunity for people that because of one thing, because of your race, because of your color, because of your physical conditioning, you may have there are limits that are put on you, that are imposed on you. So I think when an actor such as myself, who's not blind, plays a blind man, who's not bound to a wheelchair, play someone in a wheelchair, you have a responsibility to get it right, dude, because there are people out there watching.
Absolutely.
We're going to be highly critical.
Stephen, I have to let you go. How can people see Beyond Glory? How can people see Beyond Glory?
Beyond Glory will be released October 4th on iTunes, and then at various platforms from then on. How they do it, you know, it's a whole new world out there of releasing films, but you got a little taste of it there, and I think it's fair to say if you put it in one of the AMC cinemas here and went to the 3 o'clock show, there probably wouldn't be a lot of people there. I'm not sure it's a great business proposition, but the virtue of a film is that it's around for a long time. And if you dig the work I've done over the years, then I urge you to give this one a shot. And if you have a vet in your family, I know it'll have some meaning for them as well. But basically, if you're interested in the craft of acting, then see Beyond Glory, and iTunes October 4th, so spread the word.
Absolutely. Stephen, thank you so much for being here. Thanks, man.